Okay, so today I was just checking my notes. This is a good one because I've received, I feel like, a lot of comments about it, and also it's been on my mind, and it's fear of aging. So it's interesting because I've like talked a lot about aging in terms of looks, wrinkles, things like that. There's obviously like a lot of plastic surgery that exists as a way to treat those things. Slow, the effects of aging on the face and the body. I got a comment from somebody who was very young, and I can't remember. I hope you're watching this. I can't remember how old you said you were. I want to say that they were in their like teens, like late teens max. And they were talking about how they're just like really, like they're young, but they're like afraid of aging. Which, like, when you think of somebody that age being afraid of aging, then you know it has a lot to do with like outside influences. I mean, unless they're just going through some kind of an existential crisis, but like someone, say 18 years old, who's like, I'm so terrified of getting older. I feel like that is just this sort of subconscious thing, because when you're 18 years old, like, you're not supposed to be caring about that stuff. Like, you are so young. You're supposed to be living your life, going to school, having relationships, figuring out like who the fuck you are. You definitely shouldn't be worried about like getting older. That shouldn't be on your mind. Now recently, I'm 30, and I've had these like moments recently where I'm like thinking about those things heavily and like terrified of it. I keep getting notifications. I'm sorry, this is so rude. And I also see a lot in my comments, like kind of when I don't know, when I bring up certain things about like aging or wrinkles or I don't know, just getting older in general. I receive a lot of comments from people who are older than me, whether they're 35, 48, 60s and up, who are like, oh, wait till you get to my age. Which, like, I get it, but that's part of it, is that like I am anticipating those ages. And I think it's just like change in general. Like, I know now that I'm going to be changed, like my face and my body and everything is going to be changing, and you have no control over it. So that's like the one hand. I personally, when I think about like getting older and a fear of it, I'm terrified of dying. And not because I'm like afraid of death necessarily, but because I'm afraid of not accomplishing or doing all of the things, like not living a full life, I guess. So, 30 years old, that's still young, and I'm aware of that, but I'm starting to get to a point where I'm like, I'm afraid of what, lies ahead, I guess, and not being able to experience it, I guess. Like, I want to get old, but I'm also afraid of it. I don't know. It's really weird to think about. I'm definitely less afraid of getting wrinkles and saggy skin and stuff than I am actually experiencing life and living a full life and being satisfied with like the life that I've led at the end of it. This is a deep one, kids. I've got my glasses on. And I think it's like something that's inevitable. I think all of us, like we as humans are different because our consciousness, like we have to live with the fact that like we are conscious of the fact that we're going to die someday. Whether it's tomorrow or in 60 years, I don't know. That obviously weighs on us. So it's hard to just kind of like push that out, especially as you start to get older. Like when you're a kid, you're just kind of like focused on growing up. And me personally, I think that 18-year-old or however old you were, maybe you were in your early 20s, maybe you were 16, I don't remember. You should definitely be focused on growing up before you start to, dread aging. And also, I don't think that we should be dreading aging. Like, if you can get to 95, that's amazing. You've lived a whole life, That's something that you should be thankful for. And you should be thankful for all of those wrinkles and all of the, like, creases, because they all represent emotions. and like experiences. That's kind of what I've been trying to like embrace recently. I was complaining, like, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago to some friends. We were doing like a Zoom thing, and I was complaining about, maybe this was when I was visiting them. I actually can't remember. I was complaining about these necklines, which like really bother me. I don't like them. I don't like that my face looks relatively smooth, but I have these like pretty deep, like are noticeable creases in my neck. It's from like, you know, looking down at my laptop or looking down at my phone, whatever. This is just a scratch. I think my allergies are getting worse. Anyway, I was complaining about that, and I was like, it has to do with like me looking down at my phone, and when I sleep, I like twist and turn, and I'm like all like that when I sleep. So when I wake up, this usually looks like worse. And I was blaming all these things, and my friend was like, yeah, I think it's just called having a neck. Like, it's just gonna happen. It's just inevitable, and it's not something that you should be like focused on. And I laughed because I was like, you're so right. Like, that's all it is. It's literally just like, nobody is looking at these lines in, you know, the inner part of my elbow and being like, ew. Because like, your arm creases there. That just happens. So I kind of feel like those are things that we should look forward to. Me personally, I have like a weird, certain wrinkles are like attractive to me. Like for instance, crow's feet. I don't know if I've talked about these before. I love them because they're like a reflection of happiness. They're typically like smile lines, crow's feet. Love them. I think they look great. Bless you. They don't bother me at all. And when I see like fine lines like in here, and I don't really have crow's feet. I know I'm going to get them at some point, but I'm like, okay, this anger line, worry lines, not a fan. Not a fan. Now, I'm very expressive, and I've come to just kind of like accept that because I don't want to freeze my face. I want to be able to make expressions. I don't know if you guys have seen, there's this dude who, what's his title? He's like what do you call it? Non-communicative signals analyst. That guy. I can't remember what he's called. But he analyzes like certain people and kind of like breaks down their body language and what it might say about like whether or not what they're saying is true. Why did I bring this up? Oh, because he was talking about, I want to say it was the Paris Hilton documentary. And he was like mentioning that if a person has had Botox or work done, it's very hard to read that because their face is just like frozen, you know? I don't know why I just brought that up, but I just remember that being funny. I want people to be able to read my face. But yeah, I guess I'm curious if you guys fear, like what your age is and if you're like terrified of getting older. Does it have to do with death and dying? Does it have to do with like just getting older in general? Not accomplishing things by a certain time? I know a lot of you guys have, you know, brought that up as like pressures from families or just like usually pressure from families, but just like or life goals, and you have like an idea of when they need to happen. That was actually someone else commented something about asking me to talk about, I want to say that they were like fresh out of college and all the friends were, you know, applying to grad schools or something, or maybe she was applying to grad school and all her friends were like married and having babies, and she was asking me like, what's the timeline? Like, what's the life timeline? Because I think she was saying that she felt very like all of her friends were kind of going down the same path and she wasn't really. And I responded to her basically being like, there isn't one. And you shouldn't feel pressured to like follow a specific one. A lot of people like grow up and go back to college in their 50s because they didn't finish it. Or have kids like very late, or they have kids really early, or they get married really early, or they never get married. Like it's not, you shouldn't be comparing yourself to your friends or anything like that. And you definitely should, like I understand when you have like a big group of friends and you're like growing up with them or living your lives or like going to college, and then like at that end of that path, you're kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, and all these people do. But that's like part of life. Like these are all just like experiences that you have to go through and figure out on your own, at your own pace. But I do think that those are like really important things. And I just don't understand the certain pressures that we have to you know, graduate high school and immediately go to college, or immediately graduate like college and then have to go to grad school for a certain thing that like your family wants you to do or whatever. Or have kids by like a certain time, or get married by a certain age. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, it's just very weird. I think where people fuck up is when they have those plans and they have to be set, because life isn't like that, you know? It just, shit happens. So you have to be able to kind of like adjust with it. But yeah, anyway, so like, who's afraid of dying or getting old? Basically everybody. I don't think we should be. I don't think it's something that we should like think about too much. I think to a certain extent, you want to like, you don't want to just, maybe some people just want to like live their life like it's, you know, like every day is your last, blah blah blah, whatever, like party and do drugs and all that crazy shit. Maybe that's the life that you want. It's not the life I want. You know, I want to live like a long life. I don't want this like up in the air, maybe I'll die tomorrow bullshit. Like, maybe I will. Maybe I'll get hit by a bus tomorrow. Probably not, because I don't really leave my house. Pandemic. But yeah, anyway, I think it's a natural fear. I have been thinking about it quite a bit recently. And part of it is probably the fact that I've just been kind of like resigned to home. I've really delved into a lot of subjects. Being home and being kind of like, you know, quarantined over this past year, which is insane to even think about. It's definitely been illuminating in a lot of different ways. If you're feeling this, if you're like, if this is something that you've been thinking about recently or not, if you had maybe like an increased awareness, I guess. Has it been recently? Has it coincided at all with quarantine? Was it at the beginning? Obviously, like, plenty. So many people have died of COVID. It's like over 400,000 people in this country have died of COVID now. It could have something to do with that, you know? That could be like triggering this thought in my mind. I don't know. I never know what all of the outside influences are, but I have been thinking about it a lot recently, like past few weeks, I'd say. I've also been very stressed, so that could probably, you know, be something to do with it too. Anyway, I'm curious if you have been thinking this way, if it's like in this moment, if it was like at the beginning of quarantine, if basically how it, if or how it coincides with the quarantine. I don't know if any of that made sense. Okay, great talk. I don't know if it was.